Well, I guess it helps to add yourself to the stream once you go live. I forgot to do that before going live, so I apologize for the blank screen there at the beginning. Hello, John H. Hello. I think Scott was the first one here tonight. Let me go up there and check. Let me get up. Gosh, I got to get my mouse operating here just a second. No, Pat Butler was the first one here tonight. Hi, Pat, and John H. and the Forgiven Wretch. Diana too. Let me see who else. Little Lone Prepper, welcome. I was just with Little Lone Prepper. For those of you who don't subscribe, David Lynn, Prepper Principal, does a hello Triple G Farms. Was having a live stream, and so I was over there with Little Lone Prepper, and had to leave him to come here. But welcome everybody. Welcome Scott Hummer. Gosh, what an exciting week. So let me bring you up to date with where I am, and then we'll get into the book. We had a lot of hail damage here from back in April. The insurance company wrote a check for about $28,000 for all the damage. Removing solar panels, putting up the new shingles, damaged fence from wind damage. We had a couple of screens that needed to be replaced. We had some water damage inside the house. Oh, wow. So Triple G Farms is going to be losing water, may lose water tonight. Sorry to hear that. Hello, Holly, and welcome. So anyhow, so everything's been repaired except for two things. We still didn't have the interior, the ceiling, where the water came down inside and took out our ceiling. And we still don't have the screen replaced. It's one of the screens on the windows. And so they came Tuesday and did some work, to cut out the area where the water damage was, put in the new drywall, and then mudded that and let it dry and everything else. And they came in and did the texturizing of the ceiling and the painting yesterday. And then he came back today because he wanted to wait for it to dry, and he was going to paint the wall where they had got some of the paint on the wall, make sure that was a consistent color. And I said, hey, look, it's not fixed. It's sagging here. We got water damage. What looks like water damage there. And he goes, oh my God. So what was supposed to be finished up today can't be finished up today, and it can't be finished up until Monday. So Helen was having a fit over the all the sanding dust from the drywall and everything else. And so she just totally swept, mopped everything, these three rooms, and dusted and everything all day today. So it's been one of those days. But anyhow, that's kind of how life goes. And so hopefully we'll get that fixed on Monday, and we'll be good to go. The guy who came, the guy who did the speckling, who I think was the incompetent one as far as getting this done, extreme liberal. He tried to pass himself off, and I don't know why people do that. Try to pass themselves off, extremely liberal, extremely conservative, and say I'm a centrist. Just have some intellectual honesty. Say this is my position, whether it's extremely liberal or extremely conservative or in the middle. I am right of center. I will tell people that. I'm a constitutionalist, and so if you want to have a discussion with me, that's the angle that I'm going to take in that conversation. Hello, Mitch J. And Sean Penrod, welcome. Wow, 107 in Northern Illinois. I'm going to have to call some of my cousins tonight and make sure that they're okay. I've got some right across the border in Wisconsin, and then the rest of them are north and northwest Chicago area. So thank you for that information, Sean. So I don't know if you know it or not, but the entire Northeast coast is under a level 1 power warning, and they could lose power this evening. They've asked all of their plants to hold off on any maintenance. Everybody should be producing electricity at 100% because of the heat wave and the demand on air conditioners. I was told that in some parts of New York and New Jersey, Pennsylvania, it only got as cool as 80 degrees last night. It usually gets down into the 60s, so people are running their air conditioners all night too. But anyhow, the stress on the lines is so great that they're asking everybody to drop their consumption. They're asking for more production. And so it looks like we may have some rolling brownouts occurring maybe as early as tomorrow in the Northeast. So everybody, please be careful up there. So hello, Tofu, welcome. So question, how were your preparations that you made been helpful for you during this time with the incident that caused the water damage? Oh, well, so the water damage is just, it soaked in. There's they have the exhaust pipe for our microwave and oven in our kitchen, goes up in the wall, in between the kitchen and the living room. And so that pipe goes straight up this partition. And so when there was wind damage and hail damage to the shingles right there, the water naturally was attracted to that aluminum pipe, and it came down the pipe. And then as soon as it met any kind of a resistance, which would be the drywall for the ceiling in the living room, then it would saturate that with water. And then, of course, that starts to sag. Once the drywall gets wet, it starts to sag and everything else. And so we had everything like that. So that's the water damage that we had, was basically from that. Supposedly, we've got some new, the roofer installed some new type of things that's going to prevent that type of damage in the future. We've lived in this house 8 years, and this is the third roof. This area of Central Texas is very prone to tornadoes, high wind, horizontal winds, and hail. So we get a lot of the really bad weather right here in Central Texas. And we were right here during the Gerald tornado in 1997, I believe it was. That was an F5 that only moved 1 mile an hour through Gerald, and it actually pulled asphalt out of the streets. So, we just have to kind of be cautious of those things and see what happens. I was working at Dell at the time that happened, and I was working in Round Rock 1, which is Michael's office was upstairs directly above my cube. And they put us all down in the basement, basically, as a safety measure. But the basement, because it was built into the side of a hill, was, you had a half and half. On the sides were glass and earth. And then one wall that faced due east was solid glass. And I said, no, there's no way I'm going to stay here. That's not during a tornado. That would be a terrible place to be. So, Triple G, I have all of my insurance, my banking, my investments, life insurance, car insurance, homeowners insurance through USAA. As a matter of fact, I'm a 50-year member, over a 50-year member now. I got my 50-year membership. Thank you. Here 2 years ago, but as soon as I left, as soon as I got drafted, I had to have my own insurance. I was still eligible because I was on my dad's policy. The only time I've been out of USAA was for 9 months when I was in Germany. This last time in 1984, it was still that you had to be an officer to be in USAA. Unless you were a dependent, which is how I got my membership. But I was enlisted at the time. And so when I went over to Germany, their agreement with the German government was they could not insure you in Germany unless you were a commissioned or a warrant officer. And I was enlisted. So once I became a warrant, so I went over in January 21st. I became a warrant September 21st. And then, so September 22nd, I was back on USA. So that 9-month period, it's the only time I have not been a member in the last 52 years. Great idea, Sean, is that liquid IV is fantastic, phenomenal. Great idea. I strongly recommend it to everybody. I like to have 3 different things in mind. I have liquid IV. I have, no, I have 4. I have drip drop. No, I have 5. I have drip drop. I have nutrient survivals, replacement energy pack. I have Tang, lots of Tang, and then I have powdered Gatorade. So those are the 5 drink additions that I have in my storage. Any of those 5, I think, is going to do you a good job. Okay, we're ready to get into this book. So remember, this is going to be the last. We're going to do Volume 9, Conflicted Home, from Angry American tonight. Then we're going to start alternating. So next month, what we'll be doing is Book 1 of the Borrowed World series by Franklin Horton. So this is going to be our end of August, last Thursday in August book review. Then in September we'll go back and we'll alternate and do 8 Americans, book 10. Then we'll do book 2 for Franklin Horton. Then we'll do book 11 for Angry American. Then book 3 for Franklin Horton's Forgotten World Series. So we're just going to start alternating those. Triple G Farms, yeah. I drank Tang as a kid, so I wanted to be an astronaut. So that was developed for the astronauts. That was that moon drink, is what we called it back when I was a kid. Hello, Cats and Prepping. Welcome. Okay, so let's get into this one. Golly, what an exciting thing that's happened. So number one, we start off. Morgan is recovering from having been shot by Porky with that .32 caliber in the rib cage area. So and of course he had exterminated Porky during that argument. And isn't that the truth? Yeah, you remember that, and then you could keep the jar and make it into a glass drinking jar. But they've always had those orange screw top lids. That's great. Oh no, green. It's a green lid. But anyhow, so Morgan's wounded. He's recovering. After he recovers, the Schofield and Livingston send out an investigative team along with Sarge and his group. So there's a 3-vehicle convoy that is going south because there's rumors that the Cubans and Russians have invaded. They've got the Mitchell has his ham radio set up. So not only can he find out pictures of hurricanes that are coming towards the Florida coast off of his ham radio setup, but he's also listening to a guy who's transmitting out of Fort Bliss area. And so he's getting things there. He's getting notified of things that are happening on the West Coast with the Chinese, things that are happening throughout the world, et cetera, et cetera. So they send out this 3-vehicle convoy. So they've got basically an AMRAP. They've got 2 AMRAPs and MRAPs. I'm sorry, MRAPs. They've got 2 MRAPs and then a dune buggy, basically. And so when they're going down, they run into what evidently must be a BMD, which is Boyovaya Mashina Desantnaya, which is the airborne version of the BMP. And then that is accompanied by a BTR-80, Brony Transporteur 80. So a armored personnel carrier with a heavy caliber machine gun on it. And evidently this one's been upgunned. So they turn around and they start to scoot. As they're running, you've got Dalton is sitting in the turret of the Hummer, or the not the Hummer, but the dune buggy, basically. No, it is a Hummer. He's sitting in the turret of the Hummer. He sees them firing, and so he yells, tells everybody to weave. And so he starts to weave. As he weaves, the round hits the National Guard vehicle that was in the middle, because when he weaved, it removed him as a target and hit the one in the middle. Hello, Guru and Wahoo the Turtle. Just saw you over on David Lynn's channel as well. And thank you for coming over. So it takes out that entire MRAP with the National Guardsmen in it. Very controversial thing that happens. So one of the guys is on fire from the MRAP. He steps out, and as he steps out, as they're driving past him, Dalton takes him out. And so everybody's really upset about that. And I think that leads us to a discussion about reality of first aid and performing any kind of triage in a post-apocalyptic world where you don't have anything like a shrine hospital for burn victims, or you don't have BAMC, which is the Brooke Army Medical Center, BAMC, which is probably the foremost burn facility in the world. And so if you don't have those capabilities, and somebody is on fire and probably has third-degree burns, over 80% of their body is probably going to die anyway, are you going to try to save that life, or are you going to help them expire? That becomes a moral decision that most people going to have to struggle with. Dalton made his decision, and he did for that National Guards person what he would have expected somebody to do to him. Of course, he pays for that. There's a lot of animosity towards him, both from his own group as well as from the National Guard when they find out that he shot the guy. So, so that becomes a very critical thing. We have to probably discuss that. You have to have that discussion with your family. You're going to have that discussion with your group. What are we going to do about people who have non-healable wounds or injuries or illnesses in a post-apocalyptic world? And so Triple G says that that you even can't fix some of those burns. If you got 80% burns over 80% third-degree burns, that's fatal. There's nothing they're going to be able to do for it anyway. Hello, Scrapper. Welcome. And let me see who else we got here. Okay, we're doing good. Orion Preparedness. Wow, welcome. Dobry večer. Kakti. So he says Dobry večer, which is good evening, and Dobry večer vám tože. Or tebie tože. I guess I should use the familiar verb. So vám tože is also to you, but that's the polite version. So I guess we should be friends and say tebie, which is the familiar version of to you as well. Tebie tože. So anyhow, so I think we need to have that discussion also about things. People say you need to have a tourniquet or 2 or 3 or 20 in your first aid kit. So the same thing applies. Once you apply a tourniquet, it requires a surgeon to remove that tourniquet, because we're going to have to do some arterial corrective surgery and some other things, or else when you remove the tourniquet, it's just going to go back in the same condition it was. If you leave the tourniquet on, then you've got the possibility of gangrene setting in. So the question becomes, in a post-apocalyptic world, do you even put one on in the first place? That's a discussion that you're going to have with your loved ones, with your family, with your group. It's not something that I can tell you what to do. I will tell you that if I have an arterial wound in a post-apocalyptic world, just let me go. That's going to be my opinion. So that I think that's just, and my wife and I have had this discussion. We're kind of in agreement with it. That's kind of brings that up, and then all of a sudden, of course, Morgan has been recovering from his gunshot wound. Then all of a sudden, Sarge comes running in. He says, "Hey, we've got to go up to Pensacola, to Eglin Air Force Base, which is near Pensacola." So it's about I'm going to say it's about a 12-hour drive, having been there. I did Operation Brave Shield at Eglin Air Force Base. So I was from the 337th ASA Company at Fort Riley, and the 25th Infantry Division was out of Fort Stewart, Georgia, and they were going to be the defenders, and then 82nd Airborne was going to drop in, parachute in as the assaulting things. So we were on the ground in support of the 25th Infantry Division. So I got to spend about 10 days at Eglin Air Force Base. We had 7 guys hit with, what are they called? Not tarantulas, but scorpions. We had 7 injuries to scorpions, sand scorpions, while we were at Eglin Air Force Base. Unbelievable. They get in your boots, they get in your books, they get in your underclothes, they get everywhere. It's unbelievable. But anyhow, so Sarge and Doc, Ted, Mike, and Morgan all go up to Eglin, and they meet with the general. And the general makes not Doc, but Sarge a colonel, basically. And then he provides all this food and supplies and everything else. So they've got a fuel bladder, a tank that they got a semi-tank. Yes, Pat Butler. Yes. Yes, you can. Absolutely. And I strongly recommend it. where was I? So they go up to Eglin Air Force Base. They get a semi tanker full of diesel. They get a fuel bladder full of gasoline. They get supplies like you would not believe. And so that takes a 5-ton truck and trailer, a striker, and they get a striker too. A striker with the what is it, a 105 or 120 millimeter gun? I forget which one it is on it. The turret, basically the tank, the wheel tank is what it is. And so they've got their own vehicle. They've got they've got the semi. They've got a 5-ton truck. They've got 4 vehicles just loaded to the max with equipment and everything else. And they take that back down to Morganville is what I'm going to call it, where Morgan and his family live. And they're going to divvy all that up and then distribute it to the people who are living in Umatilla and what's the other one? Alcatoon or something like that. And so they spend the night divvying everything up. And, some of the things they were looking for in particular were tooth care products. They were looking for feminine hygiene products, for diapers, soap, things like that. They were looking for some flour, rice. And so what they get is they're finding out that there is some supplies coming in from other international countries. So they're getting flour and rice, let's say, from India and things like that. So kind of like the UN dropping in stuff. And so then I forgot, the book starts off with a nuclear explosion over in the vicinity of where Southern Command is. And so everybody assumes that Southern Command's been taken out, but Southern Command had been they thought that might happen. There might be a nuclear attack. So they split everybody up and moved them all out, and they moved all the supplies out and everything else into different locations. And that's how General, I forget the general's name, ends up in Eglin Air Force Base. And so that's why they have to go up there and get all the supplies. So they bring them back. Some of the things that are in there is right before we get to that, one of the things I thought was really interesting was they talked about the importance of having vinegar. So if you have canning jars and vinegar, you can pickle almost anything. So they give a recipe for how to pickle things in the book. Then there's a lot of romance going on, of course. So it appears Eric and Fred. Fred is now with child, and so Eric and Fred are going to get married. You've got Todd and Mary are hooking up, and they're going to get married. Then it appears that Jess and Ted are kind of doing this, and then it appears that Kay, if you remember, she was the cook from the DHS camp, and Sarge are kind of getting together. So a lot of people are kind of coupling up, and we're going to see a lot more romance, let's call it. Although it's it's a subterfuge. It's not anything that's, this is not going to qualify as a romance novel, that's for sure. But anyhow, there's a lot of romance going on behind the scenes. One of the things that's really interesting, and this is kind of in line with what happened in Steve Smith's Stonemont series. It's the same thing that happens kind of in Franklin Horton's series. And the question becomes one of, what if you don't have a penal system? If you have a judge who is you've appointed him, but you don't really have any penal codes. You've got Shane and Shane and Sean, I think, are the two deputies for Morgan as the sheriff. If you got all this set up, how do you take care of punishing crimes? So you've got levels of crime. You've got the trivial crimes, and then you've got the big crimes. So the big crimes, of course, you're going to hang them or something like that. You got the very trivial crimes. So how do you punish those? And so one of the things that they do is they catch these two guys stealing from the farm as they're growing food. So they just make them wear a placard around town. I stole from you. I stole food from you. And so, of course, that becomes an emotional thing as they're trying to, deal with that, and everybody realizing what they did. I got to put my glasses on. So remember, when I read a book, I keep a 5x8 card with my notes on things I want to discuss about that book or important learnings in it and the page numbers for it. So right behind that, then we have Morgan has killed a I believe it's a deer. It might be a cow. No, it was a deer. A deer, as they're driving in the dune buggy. No, as they're driving in the Suburban, a deer jumps out of nowhere and jumps right into front of the dune buggy. It was being chased by a pack of wild dogs. So everybody thinks that since it's the only vehicle on the road, how are the chances of that happening? Probably what happened was the deer committed suicide to avoid being ravaged by all this pack of wild dogs. So they pick up the deer, they take it home, they dress it, they butcher it, and then Morgan gives his recipe for making biltong, which is the South African version of jerky. And so that's on page 48. Then on pages 48 and 49, he also talks about pickling it. And he says we need to have vinegar. Well, they've run out of vinegar. Remember, we talked about vinegar at the very beginning of the book and how important it is for pickling and preserving items. So now on pages 48 and 49, he talks about how to make vinegar. I will tell you, if you look at my pantry haul, either last week or the week before, you'll notice that I got another gallon of vinegar. And the reason is because of this book. So, let me tell you that up ahead. Hello, Christian Westcott. That looks like a new name. Welcome. Good to see you. Me too. But I think what it is one of those things, and I've tried to get people on to talk about that. Prepping with Sarge is fantastic. Make sure you subscribe to him. He is a mental health professional. Sassy Gal Prepping, she's also a mental health professional. And so one of the things that we have is we have to find some sort of a support mechanism, and that support mechanism can be a partner. And so a lot of times what you'll find is that people will partner up, even people who may not have been considering each other prior to an SHTF environment. They will hook up with each other in order to provide some sort of mutual support, mental support, emotional support. And that's primarily what you really need, is that mental and emotional support and a sense of belonging, a sense of having somebody to take care of and somebody there to take care of you. So it becomes extremely important. It becomes even more important in an SHTF environment than it is in a pre-SHTF environment. So then, of course, I told you about all the supplies came in, especially the feminine hygiene pads. While they're up there getting the materials, while they're up there getting all the supplies and everything else, they find out that in the mess hall or in a snack bar, they have donuts and coffee. So all these guys, Doc, Sarge, Ted, Mike, Morgan, they go into this place and they're gorging on donuts, just stuffing their mouths full and slopping down on coffee like you would not believe. And so, of course, the question becomes one of, when you haven't had something for a while and then you get it, you have a tendency to go to excess. You can overload on it. Hello, Grill It, welcome. Wow, 107 in Nebraska. It's only 102 here in Texas. Golly, what are you guys doing taking our heat? It's supposed to be the other way around. You're supposed to be cooler than we are. ABC Patriot, welcome. Good to see you. Let me see if there's anybody else. So anyhow, so just be aware of that. That's going to happen. The other thing that happens is that we find out that even now the economy is starting to come back. So they're starting to talk about bartering silver and gold. Now, I have been a very solid proponent of having real currency, silver and gold, and especially for a timeline. I'm not going to say it's going to be valuable the entire time. There will be times when it'll have its effectiveness and its benefit of having it as a value of a money, a currency. But that Selko Begovic book we just finished Tuesday night, back earlier in one of the earlier chapters, he said that the best thing is not to have coins or rounds, but to have it in jewelry. And because if you have coins and rounds, then that leads to suspicion that you have more. Whereas if you take the ring off your finger and give that to them, then they think that you're starving or you're sacrificing your last piece of gold or whatever for that trade. So I'm kind of in the gradual process of changing out gold and silver bars and coins and rounds in exchange for jewelry. I think that's probably going to be a wiser thing to do. Now, the difference, the disadvantage here, it's not discussed in the book. The disadvantage of doing that is if you have a certified round or a coin, either gold or silver, it's going to have its purity marked on it, and it's going to have its weight marked on it. So now you have a very known commodity that this is 1 ounce of 0.999 pure silver. And if you convert that over to jewelry, you don't have that known commodity. You have to test it for purity. You have to weigh it and everything else. There's advantages and disadvantages to each one of those too. So make sure you pay attention to that and that you're using it for what you need to use it for. Then we have a little bit about talking about preparing seeds. They're getting their crops in. They're starting to do a little bit of their own canning and pickling. He talks a little bit about the difference later on about dry canning and pressure canning and how you can do both of them. But on page 124, he's talking about saving tomato seeds and that you have to have part of the pulp with the seed in order for it to germinate. I did not know that. I thought you could just dry the seed itself and it would be okay. But according to the book, you have to have a little bit of the pulp with it. So one of the things that he talks about on page 127 is no plastic shelving that has a tendency to fall apart, and I agree with that. Then right after that, on page 128, 129, he talks about Tatler reusable canning lids. I had never heard of them. So I checked on them, and yes, they exist. They are reusable canning lids. So if you're buying the ball lids right now, you know, the sealers, and then you got the rings that go over the sealers. The Tatler lid sealers are reusable. So I'm going to be getting some of those. That's on my Walmart list. In my pocket. We'll see if they have it. Nope, that's my money. There it is. So there's my shopping list right now. It says peanut butter, Tatler reusable seals, creamed corn, Jiffy peanut butter, navy beans, hot chocolate, vinegar, more vinegar, ghee, oil, rice, parquet, and what do I have? Baristol. I was watching Wrangler Star, and he has this thing called Baristol. And so what he does is he puts it on a rag and puts that into one of those little folding metal containers, and he keeps that, and then he wipes all of his tools. Anywhere where human skin has touched his tool, that acid can start corroding a tool, and he wipes it with that. So right now I'm using WD-40, but he swears by this Baristol, so I got to try that. And I checked, and it is available at Walmart, so I'm going to try to get that at my next trip to Walmart. Let me catch up with comments. Well, the problem here's the problem, and Pat, and it's a very real one. All the Yankees really gave us a hard time for both of our Ice Mageddons because they don't understand how 3 days of icing in Texas can shut us down when we probably have 3 days of icing every 10 years. You know, it's just not something we have on a regular basis. We don't have salt trucks. We don't have sand trucks. We don't have anything for our roads when they get covered with snow and ice because it happens so rarely. So for an ice storm to hit us, it devastates us. Well, the same thing when you get up into the northern latitudes like Nebraska. It's usually fairly cool there. It gets a little bit hot during the daytime. I'm going to say 80s and 90s typically. And at night, it will get down into the 60s and 70s where you can sleep. All you need is a fan. They don't have the air conditioning that we have down here in Texas. So while we're prepared for extreme heats here and down in Texas, and to us it's normal, up there they don't have preparations for the extreme heat. They do have preparations for extreme cold. We don't. So that's kind of just the flip flop of where we were with Ice Mageddon. But I'm going to be a little bit more understanding, and having lived in Kansas, where in military quarters where we didn't have air conditioning, I can understand where you're coming from, and so I can empathize with that. I am not so sure that air conditioning has done us any favors. I believe that it causes physical conditions, physical ailments like you would not believe. When it's 110 degrees outside and then you step into a 70-degree building, that constant change of 40 degrees temperature between the outdoors and the indoors is not doing us any good. And the same thing with our vehicles. When we have air conditioning in our vehicles and it's, got them at 75 and it's 105 outside, that's a 30-degree temperature variance. And I'm not sure that our bodies were made to rapidly change or to rapidly adjust to that rapid change, instantaneous change between exterior and interior temperatures. Yeah, and I think, so one of the things we need to do is build that trust, and of course with trust you start to build intimate trust as well. I can see how to me it makes sense that it's a logical extension of a friendship. Um, so Sean says, yeah, he's trying to use his fans. Wow. Yeah. Well, I'm 70. Next month, I'll be 71. Helen's 2 years younger than I am. We don't mow our lawn anymore. Although that used to be her favorite thing to do was mow the lawn. That was her exercise. And I would do the edging and trimming and then the raking and leaf blowing and all that kinds of stuff. We don't do that anymore. We have somebody come by every 2 weeks and do that for us. And so that's just the penalty of old age is we don't want to be out in the heat. We don't want to be out doing physical labor like that anymore. I don't know what we're going to do. I guess the lawn will just die in an SHTF environment. Um, yes, I have heard that, Sumi. I'm not sure how to make that judgment. I'll have to get with somebody very experienced in canning to do that. Right now, mine are pretty much reusable because remember, I'm using that seal it system where you put a hole in the seal, and then you've got a little rubber flap, and you got this pump that basically evacuates all the air inside you. You're sucking it out through that rubber seal. So then the rubber seal will be pulled down into that hole to maintain that pressure inside the can so that it's a negative pressure and it keeps it sealed. So those lids I know can be reused because you don't really dent the can or ruin the edges when you remove it. You lift up on that little rubber tab and that breaks the vacuum, and then you lift it up without bending or damaging the seals or the edge of the tins. So I know those can be reused for sure. Um, Scrapper says tattlers are reusable, but keep an eye on the rubber ring that goes under the plastic lid. They can crack over time. And I wonder, can you use vegetable oil to make it more pliable and to keep the resiliency of it? So that's a question I would ask you if you have any experience with that. Um, My son-in-law does a really good job of making different oils. So he made some mushroom oil for me. He made some garlic oil for me. We had some hot pepper oil. So he does a very good job of making oils for me. But of course, that's come to an end. They've moved up to New Jersey. So that's not going to be happening here in the near future. That is terrible. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help you. Be happy to do that. Here he is, David Lynn Prepper. So this is the one. Hello, Tofu. Will you do me a favor and make sure you put his link as well? So that's the live I was on just prior to coming here. A lot of us were there, so thank you for being there. Um, oh, you're quite welcome. You're quite welcome. Um, our guy who's doing the ceilings that's for the water damage from the hailstorm is from Kempner. So we were talking about Kempner being the home of some great German and Korean restaurants, and then told him about storms in Lampasas. So Ryan agrees about the temperature disparities. Uh, Sumi doesn't have central air. Uh, Thank you, Hello Tofu. Okay. Back to the book. So they've gone up to Eglin Air Force Base. They get all this stuff. They're bringing it back. One of the things there are two things that happen. Morgan asks the girls to go out and scrounge all the water bottles they can, and then there is a description in there on how he uses the water bottles to turn them into an air conditioning system. So that's in the book. The other thing that he asks everybody to go out and scrounge for are plastic bags. And this is a good idea because whenever I go shopping at Walmart or at HEB or any place like that, I keep those plastic bags. I wad them up and put them inside another plastic bag. I probably have a full contractor bag of plastic bags from shopping. And the reason is because that's what I'm going to use to put anything I give to somebody as far as, helping them out in a post-apocalyptic world. That's what I'm going to use is those plastic bags that I was used from shopping to give them things. So Triple G Farms, thank you so much. You're always so generous. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. So I'm saving all those bags so I can use those for giveaways. But in the book, he's asking all of his people to go out and collect those. So what they can do is they can now use those bags to separate out, put a tube of toothpaste, a bar of soap, a couple cups of flour, a cup of rice, and whatever. And then of course, they have to have a bag for the cup of rice and a bag for the 2 cups of flour and all these kinds of things. So they're kind of proportioning all this out and making goodie bags that they're going to pass out to the 2 towns the following day. So they've come up with all kinds of bags that they found at all the different local convenience stores and big box stores and everything else. And so they spend the entire night doing that. They go into town to distribute this stuff. But before that happens, they want to use the Suburban again, but the battery's gone dead. So on pages 250 and through 254, they talk about how to re-energize a dead auto battery. So how to use baking soda and ammonia and other things to basically clean it out and then turn it back into an acid type of a water electrolyte to recharge the battery. Then they hook it up to a solar recharging station at 12 volts and recharge it overnight, and it works. So, they talk about how you can use chemistry and a solar recharger to recharge a dead auto battery. So that's something else that's taught in the book. One of the things that they talk about is on page 264, and let me refresh myself on what this means. My note says that rare items have value, and value can create oh, I know what it is. I remember now. It's right here what we're talking about. So people haven't had flour, people haven't had rice, people haven't had soap, toothpaste, toothbrushes for so long, and they're so valuable that people are willing to trade those away for other things, alcohol and things, addictive things or things that are going to satisfy their immediate wants other than food. So people are trading those away, and it becomes a commodity, a base commodity that a lot of the people who haven't had anything and suddenly have something given to them, that thing is more of a barter item than it is for a sustainment item. So, that's kind of where that is. So they take all these things into town, and when they take them into town, they're handing everything out, and all of a sudden they come under mortar attack. And so, a lot of people get injured, a lot of people get killed, and so they begin reacting to the mortar attack. It turns out that it's the what's his name, Naiga or Niga, or something like that. That the Asian guy, probably Chinese, who was the torturer, the sadistic enforcer at the DHS camp who had escaped. So he's one of the guys. Then they have a guy, I'm going to pronounce it Micah, M-I-C-H-A, is a local guy who is kind of in cahoots with him. They think, and Morgan has Sean and Shane, tailing him because he thinks something suspicious is going on. Of course, Eric sees the Asian guy. He says, "Hey, that's the guy who was the torturer at the DHS camp." So he got some guys following him. Then all of a sudden, the mortar rounds start firing from a landing. They find the mortar base camp, or the mortar firing position. They hit it with the striker, blow that up. Anyhow, eventually they end up with Micah, 2 Cubans, and then they kill the Chinese guy, the torturer. And so they take them back, and they're trying to get information out of them. Are the Cubans hooked up with the Russians? Are there Russians in the area? What's going on? All these different kinds of things that they're trying to get information out of them. And while they're doing that, Mitch lets Morgan know that the people in town are really upset because they think the Army did the attack with the mortars, because that's a military weapon. So I think that their own, the U.S. Army is the one who attacked them. He says, why would we attack our own people? So it becomes extremely important that there some sort of symbolism be done. One of the fatalities in this attack is Bonnie, Danny's wife. Remember, in book 4, we had the people with tuberculosis and the kids. The kids did not get tuberculosis. The parents did. They end up dying from it, from a lack of antibiotics. Hint, hint, make sure you have antibiotics, either Jace Medical or Contingency Medical. But anyhow, they have a lack of antibiotics. The parents die. Bobby and Danny wanted children, couldn't have them, so they kind of adopt the 2 children. They take care of them. And so now there's a Bobby. Bobby ends up being one of the victims of this mortar attack. So they've got and she's burned to death, basically. She was too close to a fuel tank on a vehicle when it got hit by a mortar round. So, then we go through the whole thing about the community and burying her and trying to grieve with Danny, and, everything around that whole thing. And then shortly thereafter, of course, Danny loses 2 fingers on his hand. And so as a result of the mortar attack as well. So he's being cared for by Doc, stitched up and everything else, and then taking care of his wounds. Danny has to dig the grave by himself. And so very gruesome details about how his wounds keep ripping open as he's trying to take care of the final rites for his wife. And everything going on there. So Thad does his great carpentry work and prepares the monument for Bobby and everything else. So it's just phenomenal how this all goes about. So once they get all the information they want out of Mike and everything, to include a signed confession that he was the spotter observer, giving directions to the mortar crew. He's under the impression that if he gives a full confession, that he's going to be spared. But Mitch, the judge, and Morgan, the sheriff, along with Sarge, now a colonel, and Sheffield and Livingston, the captain and the lieutenant, all agree that the best thing to do is to execute the 2 soldiers and Micah, in order to quell the crowd's riotous conditions, thinking that it was the military. So they have to hold a trial in front of the community and then do the execution in front of the community in order to sway them from rioting against the very people who are trying to take care of them. And so that happens. And of course, Micah and the 2 Cubans are executed there in the square. That kind of assuages a little bit of the animosity towards the military. And that's kind of where we are at the end of the book, is the community is finally starting to get a little bit better together. Oh, by the way, in the meantime, Baker and her crew have got a lift truck working, and they've got electricity connected from the power plant that runs off of LPG all the way over to the armory. So at the very end, they're hooking up the armory with power. They find out that there are Russians and Cubans fairly close, within miles, basically, of the area, Umatilla and Altoona, where this is all taking place. And so I would imagine that, and I've already read the book, But in volume 10, book 10, we're going to see more of that, the challenge of the the Russian, Cuban, Chinese invasion. So that's kind of where we are with the book, and that's where we end. Let me put my card back inside of it. And so next month, instead of doing A Americans, book 10, we're going to be doing Franklin Horton's book 1 of the Borrowed World. When this comes out tomorrow, if you'll come back and leave your comments, there will be a link where you can buy this book through Amazon. I do get 2% of the cost of the book. So I think the book's $15. So if you buy it, I make 30 cents off of it. But anyhow, it will be available to you, so we can get together and do that. We are not doing anything the first Tuesday which is August 1st. We're not doing anything August 1st. I'm giving you time to, and the link for this one will be in there as well. This is our nonfiction book for the month of August. We're going to be doing United We Stand. We'll be doing the introduction in chapter 1 on August 8th, which will be a Tuesday. And then we'll do the next 2 on my birthday, August 15th. So that's kind of where we are with those. Let me see where we are here. Orion Preparedness. I would recommend adding Dr. Berg or LMNT electrolyte powders to water during this heat wave. Yes, absolutely. Zero sugar and all the necessary materials to keep your muscles working properly. Yes, so you need the electrolytes, that's for sure. And we even thought in the military for quite a long time that you needed salt as part of that electrolyte to help you with that. So make sure that there is a little bit of sodium or potassium in there to conduct for good conductivity of the neurons and everything else. So Triple G Farms has whole power, whole house generator. Problem is no water in the water pipes after 10 p.m. tonight. Water's getting scarce and damage to pipes is now a severe problem. Oh, wow. Gosh. I other than saying, check into, and it's not going to do any good until September because, typically August is our driest month of the year. But I would also recommend you take a look into getting a rain catchment system. So we've got 400 gallons of water in our rain catchment system right now. I don't know how much it has evaporated, but they were full as of the end of May. As of the end of May, they were full. And, June and July, we've probably had a lot of evaporation because there are small overflow valves on the top. So, but I would venture to say we could probably use those for a while until the rains come in September. I don't know. Can you get anything out of the Lampasas River and then bottles or anything like that? I don't know if you're allowed to, or if it goes anywhere close by, or then of course you got the Leon River just north of that, and then you've got San Gabriel down here. So I don't know if that would be an option for you. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate you being here. Any other questions or comments about the books? Let me tell you, I am just I'm really appreciative of the fact that Steve Smith. Well, thank you, ABC Patriot. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate the fact that Steve Smith in the Snowmont series, that Franklin Horton in all 3 of the series that I've read of his so far, which is the Borrowed World series, the Locker 9 series, and the Mad Mix series, they present such great training, along with A American, Chris Weatherman. They provide such great knowledge, information, and training in a fictional setting so that you're learning things in a way where it's easy and understandable, and in a real world application, let's say, rather than just a dry encyclopedic looking up something in Wikipedia. You've got it been in a kind of even though it's a fictional world, it's in a world-like scenario, so that it gives you a better idea of how to do things than just straight knowledge out of a Wikipedia or something like that. So thank you to all 3 of those authors that I've read so far. Then we also have Franklin Horton gave his recommendation, the author of The Road, Cormac Mick something or other. So I'm going to start reading some of his books as well. He said definitely read The Road, that is a fantastic book, so I'll try to read that. I've got 2 other series that I'm starting that have been recommended. We'll see how that goes. Yes, Scott, he did a great, actually, he had him, Emery, Sue, and I forget the other guy's name. And then there were 5. So Angry American, Sue, Emery, Bear. Who was the 5th guy? Oh, T Tool. T Tool were the 5 panel members he had on last night. And the discussion was they were supposed to be focused on one thing. Oh, it was supposed to be focused on the movie about the children and everything else. So Bear from Bear Independent didn't know that he did it, but he has a child rescue organization, a nonprofit child rescue organization that is in cahoots with the movie, basically. And some of the stuff that Bear Independent does is just unbelievable. So I will put a link to that organization. It's a child's name, but it starts with a K. It's a guy's name. You would normally think it was spelled with a C, but it starts with. Let me see here. Let me go up to my history on. Go up here, history. No, it's not going to tell me because I've opened too many tabs since then. But I'll look for it and we'll I'll have it here. I know what I can do. I can go up here into my search bar and I can just put in a K, and it didn't work. I'll find it. I'll find it and I'll put it in the show notes. Okay, with that, remember that we're all in this together so we can come out the other side together. Caleb, thank you, ABC Patriot. And so calebhouse.org, I believe is what it is. Let me check and make sure here. Yes, calebhouse.org is where you want to go. And that's where you can help Bear. And he is opening up a facility here in Texas, up in northern Texas area. You will not know where it is because for operation security, for the protection of the children, he cannot divulge where the location is. But he is in dire need of donations to build the facilities for these children and get them readjusted to normalcy. One of the things that he talked about last night on that live was the fact that, and it was a very high percentage. It was over 80%. I want to say over 80% because I don't want to give the exact number. I'd be wrong if I did. But over 80% of the children who suffer abuse as they grow older become abusers themselves. And so we have to stop this cycle of abuse. And so that's what Caleb House is designed to do. Is it's basically going to provide a foster home of reinforcement, of positive things to do and things like that. Because a lot of these kids don't understand. Once they've been sexually abused, they think that that's normalcy. So they sexually abuse others. And so we've got to break that. And that's what Bear is trying to do. So calebhouse.org, if you would care to support that, that would be greatly phenomenal. And hello, Auslander Jack. Welcome. How is it down there in your winter? You're suffering through winter right now while we're here in summer. So Auslander Jack is down in Australia. He does some great videos as well. He does some thoughtful walks, and so he does some great walks. Okay, Numbers chapter 6, verses 24, 25, and 26. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and give you peace. So we are all in this together to support each other, to help each other. Once again, I want to offer my apologies to Camper Van Clark. I was less than kind, less than respectful to him at one of our discussions the other evening. I apologize for that. I'm working on trying to become a better human being, and that was a moment of failure on my part. So I apologize for that, and I hope that we can earn your trust and earn your support back again. But anyhow, remember that we are all in this together, so we can help each other. We can survive this together. Make sure that you are kind, polite, and respectful to each other, because togetherness is the key. Take care, y'all, and stay safe. I will see you Monday evening. If any of you would like to be interviewed or would like to have an online discussion, please send me an email. I would be more than happy to talk with you. And one of the things we can do too is just send me a topic you'd like to talk about. Little lone prepper, I know I want to get her on here to talk about some of her medical knowledge, but absolutely. And but anyhow, send me an email. Be happy to bring you on so we can have a discussion. Please take care, everybody. Stay safe. Bye-bye.